This is iFanboy Pick of the Week, episode 941, brought to you by Fatigue and iFanboy listeners like you. Hey, I'm Josh Flanagan. This is my co-host, Conor Kilpatrick.
Hello.
We are on the good ship iFanboy. It's Pick of the Week number 941.
We stay at just a flat level. We don't go up, we don't go down. It's just a flat level.
I do know that it's really become a thing that I consistently write the number down wrong by about 200. I was like, what are we at? Last week, I was like, what are we at, 730? And I was like, no, 9.
That was 4 years ago.
When we're going to hit a fourth digit.
Yeah, it's
like,
gonna be weird.
And not long from now. I mean, provided there's not a horrible bus wreck. But,
right.
Which is, I guess it's likely. I could get killed
about
by
a year from
bus.
now. A year and change from now, we'll hit it.
Yeah. Like, that's going to be a problem.
It's going to be weird.
We should
let's not worry about that. That's like talking about being 50. I just don't even think about it.
I'm not allowed to do that. I told you that. Like I started saying, and I waited till I was 47, and I started saying, "Oh, I'm almost 50," and Lindsay just goes, "You're not allowed to say that. I don't like what it makes me feel like, and you should stop." And it was like one of those, like, "Oh, she means this. Okay, understood. I get it. So I'm not allowed to say that."
This is a safe space.
All right, so I don't remember where we left off, but we read a bunch of comic books. One of us reads Jesus Christ. One of us picks the one that we liked the best from the stack. We call that the pick of the week. We will talk about the other comics that we have deemed talk-aboutable. We talk about the patron pick. There's listener mail. It's a good old time. I'm off today. I can tell. Here's your spoiler warning. Exercise some caution and be forgiving. You know, Connor, you had the pick.
Well, that's the thing about this show, right? You have to do it. It's like the mail. So even if you're off.
Yeah.
You got to push through. You got to find it. That's what professionals do. And Josh, you're a professional. So
I appreciate that.
I know you'll get there. I had to pick. And there was a couple of books I was considering. There was a handful of them. We're talking about all of them. It was, I think, overall solid week. I enjoyed my books for the most part. And yes, did I have the thought, hey, DC, maybe wait a couple of months until releasing DC versus Vampires World War V #1 because we just did Blood Hunt over at Marvel.
No, they were like, we were first.
I did think that. I thought, wow, more vampires. But the thing is, we really love DC versus Vampires, the original miniseries. Matthew Rosenberg, Otto Schmidt are back. I don't remember if Pierluigi Castellino was the colorist before. Possibly it was also Tom Napolitano. But we really liked that miniseries. It snuck up on us. You know, first it was just kind of a goofy concept, but it ended up being a really solid miniseries about, you know, what would happen if vampires spread through the DC universe and half the heroes and villains get turned and half don't, and then there's a big old battle. And was there tie-in stuff, or was it just to make it a miniseries?
There was at least one spinoff. It was the one that was all white and red.
I think so. Anyway, we liked it. It was fun. And so, you know, when they announced the return of the Elseworlds line, by the way, this is an Elseworlds. This is the first Pick Week Elseworlds, and I don't even know how long, maybe ever. That can't be true. When they announced the line of Elseworlds books, this was on it, and I thought, oh, okay, they're going back to that. But the thing is, much like when they went back to Deceased, you got the original creators. It's a good foundational story. It was a lot of fun, and this was slightly oversized. I think it was, like 30-something pages. As a détente has been reached between the humans and the vampires. The Vampire King Nightwing was killed at the end of the last one. Now you've got Vampire Queen Barbara Gordon. And what I liked about this especially was that right now, at least, it's more about a schism in the vampires. Mm-hmm. As Damian Wayne is leading sort of an offshoot schism of vampires who don't like Barbara's group. And so he's leading insurrections against them. And the humans off to the side, who are just like Green Arrow and Black Canary and John Constantine and Talia, not very many left, are all just sort of trying to survive and figure out what to do in the middle of this vampire civil war. It's all the Marvel events in one. I liked it quite a bit. I loved the cold open where Jon Stewart and Kyle Rayner return to Earth after being in deep space. Like, hey guys, what's going on? And then they get killed. So I really thought, oh, that's interesting. Some heavy hitters are back to sort of bolster the humans, but nope.
That's a really good way to show the stakes because, all right, these guys are back. Maybe they'll help, and they're just taken down immediately. I mean, even the way, like, you think Jon Stewart's going to make it, and he just gets housed by
Elongated Man.
Elongated. I was trying to. I was like Elastic. That's not right. Ralph Dibny as a big snake, and like comedically, like it was like 1, 2, 3, they're out. Oh, actually, no.
He survives. He busts out of him, but then there's a little bit of confusion in that. I guess they just sort of all jump on him. I didn't understand how he died there.
So they all get him, and then she pulls up his clothing. Wonder Woman does, which is weird because did they just liquidate him?
But also what's weird is the clothing has hands and he doesn't have gloves. So I thought that was his skin.
Oh, look at that. Well, these are good questions. And then the ring takes off.
I feel like that's a Chekhov's gun situation.
Yeah.
Like that ring's got to go find somebody else.
Yeah, there's a whole panel. That's good. What I was going to say is that if I was to do a compare and contrast with Marvel, which is entirely fair to do right now. In fact, it's damn near expected. This is better by a lot.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The other one was very Marvel. It was, but it was very Marvel. The villain blocks out the sun. People are getting turned. Everybody bands together. Big battle against the big bad. End of story. However, also, I will say, they're left with a situation where Doom being the Sorcerer Supreme, big deal, but all the other vampires are daywalkers and walking around. I was like, that doesn't solve any of the problem.
Right.
There's still
they
vampires
can just attack
everywhere.
You at any time now.
And now they're like, cool, doesn't make sense. Whatever. At least this one, I think Matthew Rosenberg is the single driving force of this. And I think that helps because it has one aligned vision. Two, there is a plan for this world, and it has been a new reality that's sprung up, much like Tom Taylor with his stuff and the zombies. And it has more of a, first it was like tactics. Like, how did this happen? How did the vampires align themselves? What was the plan? Whereas Marvel, it was just chaos in the streets, which was the exact same thing as the Asgardian Wars, which is the exact same thing as the Plant one. Right. It isn't. This is more like, how does it happen? How does it go on? What are the strategies? And here we have, it's almost bureaucratic.
It's almost political, right?
Yes, exactly.
Barbara in her throne room talking about the uprisings and how to put it down and what do they really want? How do we placate them? Like, it was much more interesting.
Right. And the villains are the heroes. There is no other big bad. This is like, we started this story with vampires are taking over. They're making people into vampires. So very quickly, the superheroes who get turned become the villains. And I think, and that was a good reveal. Anyway, it's just a better, more focused, more interesting character-wise story. Marvel just throws a bunch of shit at the wall every time, and you think that's going to be enough. And it is. That was super fun. But in comparison, these are all the things I was thinking as I was reading.
There was a couple of, I have to ding it for a couple of things. They weren't great with telling. It's been a while since the miniseries ended. Yes. So at first I had to remember everything. That took a while. There wasn't even like a recap page or anything because we've been gone for a while. But then there was a couple of instances where I didn't know who people were because they're not necessarily wearing their costumes anymore. So at one point when Constantine shows up with Gorilla Grodd at the humans sort of hiding base on page 16, someone is there named Max. I don't know who that is. Now I'm sure someone listening knows who that is, but I don't know.
Max Mercury?
I thought that, but it doesn't look. It was just got black hair. Max Mercury's usually older.
Maxwell,
Smart,
Wonder Woman,
Max Lord.
Yeah,
well, these are all possibilities. But the point is, we don't know exactly who that is.
Yeah.
There's the rule: is you got to say everyone's name and not just their first name. Like, who are you? And then I had the same thought later on page 21. That awesome sequence in New Jersey. I really liked the Wonder Woman mural on the wall. No idea who this dude is who's running from the vampires.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that's more on purpose.
Possibly. But I thought about it after the original scene where I was like, I don't know who some of these people are. They got to be more on point of that. And then we have another mystery about who is the new Batman because Batman was killed in the original miniseries. Right. It's not Damian. It's not Nightwing. He's dead. I guess it could be. I don't remember if Jason lived. They all died, didn't they? Didn't the whole family die? Jason and Tim and all of them in the Batcave? Am I thinking of deceased?
I don't remember.
I might be thinking of deceased.
This weird guy running away, he looks like, I don't know, he doesn't look like a superhero or anything. And then there's one panel where you see he's a vampire and he's got the baby. Right. And that is the big mystery. And they're not going to tell us that right away.
Yeah, there's several big mysteries here, which are fun. Aquaman's a dick.
Why are all of these stories, almost all of the DC ones, have Green Arrow and I was going to say Mockingbird, Black Canary, they all run around their relationship. Like, that is the most interesting relationship in the DCU for these writers. Yeah, they do.
I imagine the writers want to write them because they're fun.
I think with Ollie Queen, you have somebody who is kind of a wild card in a lot of ways.
And he's also depowered, so it's more interesting.
Yeah, but also at the end of the day, you always know that he's got the right thing at heart. Like he's a stalwart. He's a fervent believer in the right things, which is why like over in Absolute Power, you're just like, no, not that guy. There's no way.
Look at that last page where I know we gave you a spoiler warning, but in case you missed it, I'm not going to spoil what happens in the last scene. But look at the last page as that body on fire falls from the skyscraper. That's like an awesome sort of 60s cartoon image.
That was the next point I was going to make. Like if you're comparing them, Otto Schmidt is better than most. And to begin again,
Pepe Larraz is terrific. He's one of the best.
He was.
Out there. It's just a different feel.
But if you're talking about this sort of auteur thing where it's Matthew Rosenberg and then he's got like this artist who is just killing, he's perfect. He's perfect. Like it's a perfect alignment of talent with the story. And every couple of pages, I'm like, this is great. This art is fantastic. And everybody looks kind of like themselves, but kind of different. You get the otherworldly thing. Like it takes
it's that same deceased thing where it's like kind of classic DC, but also with elements of sort of modern design. But everyone is very much who they are.
Great color.
Yeah,
the color really shifts depending on the scene. It's very clear when you've gone somewhere. The first bit in the Arctic is like, all gray and silver. And then, when we're back out in the world, anyways, it changes around a lot. If you look through the pages, the color sort of goes away and comes back with relation to sort of what action is going on, which is fun.
Whenever there's a miniseries I really liked and they go back to it, I'm always like, okay. But the thing is, like, Deceased worked. I really liked the follow-up so far to the other one the DC Tom Taylor, like Knights of the Round Table version. What's it called?
Dark Knights of Steel.
Yeah, I've liked all these follow-ups so far, so they're doing well. And so, if you didn't check this out, I'd say you should, because it was good.
Matthew Rosenberg, if he may not be your favorite, but you've got it. Like he's extremely consistent.
Yes, he's very good.
Like what you're going to get. He doesn't half-ass it. If you like his stuff, you're going to be satisfied every time. And he thinks long-term really well in terms of comics. So yeah, I looked at the list and I went, okay, yeah. Because I don't know what I would have picked. I have no idea. But I know I was excited for it and I know that it delivered.
Another book I thought about was Babs #1 from Ahoy Comics. Garth Ennis, Jason Burrows doing a parody of Red Sonja or Red Sonja types.
Why didn't you tell me about this? I just figured it was a Batgirl book.
No. This is...
Right.
What do you mean, why didn't I tell you about it?
Did you?
I think I did.
Well,
I did. In fact,
it was a Batgirl book then.
In fact, I put it into our chat and I said, don't miss this book, and I sent you a link to where to download it.
Yes, you did. Listen.
Yes, I did.
Listen, Connor. I don't have to say anything after that. You go. I understand.
So, Garth Ennis, Jason Burrows doing a Red Sonja parody. There's lots of different Garth Ennises, and almost all of them were in Preacher, which made Preacher so great. Mm-hmm. But he will do really serious, heartbreaking stuff. He'll do over-the-top horror. And then occasionally he'll just do a straight up comedy book. The last one I remember reading that I really liked was the one about that time traveling thief that he did.
He did the Wacky Races book.
Right. This is more of his comedic side. Babs is the most badass, most attractive female warrior in the land. It was very funny. There's just a lot of very good, solid jokes in here. She commiserates with her fellow female warrior about nipple chafing with the scale metal bikini and things like that. And then, telling a story about actually running over a bunch of leprechauns, and that's very funny. And just, jokes. And then they get...
jokes.
Some dudes hassle them at the pub. They're very thinly veiled versions of dudes on the internet who don't like that there's now a black woman warrior, that kind of stuff. And then they're literally trolls. So there's commentary on the genre. There's commentary on the internet fandom. There's commentary on politics right now because the dudes from the bar end up finding solace with the white supremacist knights, the Ivory Knights of Unblemished Virtue, who have a sigil very much like this SS. So there's lots going on here. But at its heart, it was very funny. Jason Burrows has turned into a very reliable collaborator in fact, he's also doing the Nick Fury book right now with Garth Ennis. He's in that Steve Dillon school.
Yeah, he's a good match for Garth Ennis, I think.
I love a sword and sorcery story, and I love a sword and sorcery parody. And I think Garth Ennis is ripe for this kind of stuff because it is over the top already. There's a lot of love here anyway, I think, for the genre.
All right, I got it. I will be caught up. We'll be good to go. Apologize to listeners. I failed.
That's okay.
It's not okay. Don't let me off.
Let's just read it live on the show.
Let's not.
All right, page 1. And so came Babs. But this was very good. I thought about it for Pick Week for a while. In my heart, I really kind of wanted to pick the Sensational She-Hulk number 188 or number 10 because this is the final issue of the Rainbow Rowell run. We got a good 18 issues or whatever it was.
Oh, I was going to say 35, but she said it in the end.
Josh and I love this run. We've named it our favorite Marvel books the entire time she's been on it. Every year at the end of the year, our favorite of the Marvel books.
Yeah.
It's a bummer that it wasn't more popular than it was. I'm not surprised. She-Hulk's never popular. People like the character. They don't seem to want to buy the book. And I get it. It was more of a romance comic than an action book. I understand all the reasons why. So I'm not surprised. I was bummed.
That's true, but it lived so firmly in the Marvel universe that I think that that's a shame.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? A lot of times a book like this will be like outside of things, but it wasn't. It was, everything else was going on without the vampire incursion, which is fine.
So, this issue wrapped up everything nicely. Not in a bow because, will things continue on with her and Jack? Will other writers run with that or just leave it be? It's hard to say.
She didn't really drop them off a cliff or like resolve. It was an ending. It was a satisfying
didn't break up,
ending.
They didn't get married. They're just sort of still together. And whether or not anybody else ever deals with that is up to other writers.
Like she's ready for the next phase in her life.
Right. So last issue was, Carol pushing hard for her to join the Avengers. So now here she's basically on the Avengers. And the problem is her life keeps intruding on their missions. And so she's a lawyer and her clients need her. And then she's missing out on dress up in fancy dresses and eat cakes Wednesday with Patsy. So she's missing out on that. And she's going to miss the co-op board meeting for those two. Were they Eternals or were they?
I don't know.
Those guys.
They have a different word for them.
Anyway, she's got a lot of responsibilities that's been built up through the course of this series, and they're all being thrown by the wayside by her being in the Avengers. And also, there's an Avengers cocktail party, which is just them hanging out, which is very weird and small. And two of them are alcoholics. And she brings Jack as her date, which is awkward for everyone because of what happened the last time he was around. And so there was a lot of good stuff.
Do you remember
here.
What happened last time? Because I wasn't.
He blew up and Avengers disassembled.
Oh.
His body blew up and killed people.
Wait, was it like this? Or was it not like...
It was not like that. It was not like that. It was definitely not like this or that. So there's a lot of her having to juggle what her new life means and what the responsibilities are and what she will actually do. And at the end, she sort of chooses her life over the Avengers. She goes to the co-op board meeting. She goes back to the law office. She goes to meet Patsy in her fancy dress and says, what about the Avengers? They'll call me if they really need me. And that's the final line of the thing.
See, what I thought was really interesting about that was, this was, by the way, like a complete take on an adult life that has too many demands.
Right.
It was like you have to, self-care, whatever, however you want to call it. And it was like a very mature idea of like, well, I have to be able to be this complete person and do all of these things. And it sort of makes sense that there wasn't necessarily a closure of it. It wasn't her making the decision like, listen, I'm sorry, after all this, I can't be on the Avengers, which is how I thought it was going to end, because that's usually how it ends.
Right.
But they didn't do that. She said, all right, no, I'm going to do this on my terms. But also at the same time, it kind of recognizes, again, with sort of a mature adult sort of thing, like when I say mature, I just mean like a real life sort of situation is like, you maybe don't want to devote your entire life to the one thing. And so many other hero stories are like, the hero makes the sacrifice and ruins their entire life for the sake of being part of this thing.
Yeah, which was Spider-Man this week.
Right. And here you have this like adult woman who is very, diverse in her interests and what she does with her life. And she's decided like, no, I'm not giving up any part of this. And I thought that's really like a satisfying thing in a way. And it's very different than all the other things, but it's also very like down to earth. And also I would be remiss that the scene, like basically this all culminates with the co-op meeting.
Which was terrific. That was my favorite scene of the week.
Right. Carcass and Ransack are going to, and you're like thinking it's going to be a horrible thing. And the turnaround, which was, brilliantly done.
People need to understand, getting into a co-op in New York City, in Manhattan, is a life or death situation. It is the hardest thing. They have turned away celebrities. They've turned away politicians. Like, co-op boards are fucking ruthless in New York City. They decide whether or not they're letting you in the building. You have no say in the matter. They have to vote to allow you to buy an apartment. That's how crazy it is. And so I was very excited for this scene, knowing that. And it went the other way, as you said, and it was still very hilarious and funny.
Yeah, and she could have made it funny and work in the way that you expected. Like, it could have been a disaster and then whatever. But it was really used really nicely as a thing where things are going to go smoothly. And it also proves the point, like, she doesn't need to be
right
she doesn't need to solve every problem. She doesn't need to be there for everything all the time, which I mean, Jesus, I think I just made this my pick of the week. Just because of just that level of storytelling as we go through it, the things that are going on here, the avoidance of cliche and like this genuine love of these characters, every one of them in here that shows through the page, and an understanding of them and an ability to write them as humans is really interesting. It's been a great take.
The Reject is a deviant.
Deviant, that was the word I was looking for.
But he's also an Eternal.
Is that like a degenerate then?
He's born different. They're not too accepting. Andres Genele, terrific for this book. It's a romance comic. Everyone's very pretty. Great facial acting. He even draws Ransack to look a little Kirby-esque, a little bit harder lines on him as opposed to everybody else because he was a Kirby character. Just wonderful. And this book was a gift. Rainbow Rowell's been a gift.
Yep.
Actually, one thing I was thinking of while you were talking before is that I had this thought while reading my books this week, and it's going to come up later in one of the books we're talking about, is we see so rarely now, because every story is life or death. It doesn't go the way they used to, where we sort of followed the characters through their lives. Now it's just one big catastrophe after another. That we so rarely spend time with the secret identities. We don't, they're civilian identities. We so rarely have time to spend with that because we're so busy going from one big thing to another. That this book was almost all about that. This was all about her civilian side of She-Hulk and how she was dealing with it all, and it made it a treat in that sense.
And also, it was 25 issues, pretty much of the same story. It wasn't like subdivided. It was, but like it felt like there was a continuity through everything, which isn't entirely rare. That's happening over in Fantastic Four. Mm-hmm. But, we got to live with these people. There's something novelistic about it, which is not a surprise, as the writer is also a novelist. Yeah, it's delightful. It's really a bummer it's gone because, for the 2 years or whatever, you could see that book in the list and reliably understand that you were going to have a good time for 5 minutes.
And be excited. Like, oh, it's She-Hulk week.
Yeah.
I think it has been my favorite Marvel book. Since She-Hulk and Fantastic Four have been my two favorite Marvel books for the last couple of years, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe Spider-Man.
Pretty good. I was going to say Amazing Spider-Man.
Those 3 books were my Serious Vampires, Babs, and She-Hulk were like in the contention for a pick of the week.
I feel like maybe we haven't checked in on Transformers for a while. We're now 11 issues in, which feels like it just started. And still feels like we're kind of in an early part of this whole war going on. But I still am really enjoying every issue of this. I've very much gotten used to, having Daniel Warren Johnson on writing and art, well, first of all, he won an Eisner for it.
Right.
Second of all, it's an embarrassment of riches. But that said, I think that the Jorge Corona art has really, melded and fit in really well over time. It's got a lot of that same quality.
This is the issue, I think, where he made the book his own.
Mm-hmm.
I was really impressed with his work in this issue. I didn't think about Daniel Warren Johnson's art, and I made it his own for me, at least as a reader. Like, I'm no longer, and I like Jorge Corona a lot.
Yes,
but Daniel Warren Johnson is like right now one of the best in the business, and so I was mourning his loss, even as Jorge Corona was coming along for the last 4 issues. But is that math?
I thought
5 issues.
Yeah.
5 issues. But this is the first issue where I was like, damn, this is some really terrific stuff here. And I wasn't thinking about Daniel Warren Johnson anymore. I was thinking about how much I like the way that Jorge Corona draws. And they need an artist like him who draws things in weird proportions and weird, skinniness and bigness. And it all doesn't really make sense, but it looks terrific.
If you go through it, Johnson could do dynamics and big stuff really well. That's what, do a power bomb. The entire thing was like that all the time.
Yeah, dynamism.
If you flip through this now, most of it is pretty straightforward panels, not grids necessarily. But then when it's necessary, when the big thing happens, it is significant. And it's foreshadowed a little bit in the art before that. It's like the panels are building up to do something really impressive. So when those robots merge into the other robot, like that page is like, ooh, and then they double down on that. We're saying dynamism, but dynamics are actually, loud versus soft.
Page 19, after they've turned into Devastator, and it's a really nice shot from the ground level looking up. But we already know that these Transformers are gigantic. So how big is Devastator? So big that the physics don't make sense, but it doesn't matter.
I think it's like the cartoon in that, like, don't worry about it.
No, I don't worry about it. I'm just saying that's a great shot. It's a fisheye lens. We don't really have a sense of how big it is because you're looking at it from the ground. It's like when you walk up to a tall building and look up at it. And then the next page is that dude coming at us with the giant gun.
Ultra Magnus,
who then sees And I'm laughing. I do feel horrible. He has PTSD immediately and runs away because he was tortured by what's his name?
Shockwave.
To
me, we were talking about a reversal in that other scene in which you don't expect. And here they do the same thing. Like every Transformers nerd is like, oh, Ultra Magnus, because he was in the movie and it's exciting and he looks cool as shit. He's like, well, they did a design that is very similar to Optimus Prime, but is awesome and his shoulders go up higher and it's cool. And he shows up and they used all of their excess energy to bring him back because it was the right thing to do. And he just goes, yoinks, and turns into a truck and drives away. And it's not at all what you expect. And they end the story on that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
In like heroic comics to be like, where were you going? See you next week. Yeah. Like that is so opposite of what you would expect to happen. It's a brave choice. However, with a book like this, it's something you can safely get away with. Like people aren't going to drop it based on that. Be like, it's not heroic. It's awesome.
It was a good choice.
Yes.
I mean, the only sort of negative I have, and this is not at all their fault, is that the only two female Transformers are both pink because the chicks dig pink. And so I got a little confused a couple of times which pink Transformer was talking.
Female pink characters on 80s toys were like, it wasn't just trying to get girls in. It was like, let's also make sure boys don't buy those ones. It's weird. Like, we've come a long way. Theoretically, probably not.
The series continues to be really fun, even though I would just love a quiet issue to slow down. But I get that's at the tenor of the book. I get it.
I also think that, there's a couple other bits, and there's a reason that I put it in here, is that one, they've turned Shockwave into like a really terrifying villain.
Yeah.
Like, he's a
torturer.
Cool. Yeah.
He's the one in charge of torturing the captive Autobots. And so there's a whole segment of the ones who are left behind, not the ones from their first arc, who are all twitchy.
He's like the Nazi of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then this is the one where Soundwave, is like, I have the parts to fix my dog. And he
just wants to fix his dog.
It's like, nobody will
let him. No one will let him.
He's like Milton. I was the leader,
Someone fix Ravage. And he's just like, nope, we need those parts for other guys. But what about Ravage? Just not happening.
Bitch, we don't have time for that. Oh.
Now 2 successive leaders of the Decepticons have said, nope, sorry. He just slinks into the corner.
I still don't think he's going to defect. Soundwave's not going to... I mean, they're kind of setting it up.
However, what if they offer to fix Ravage?
Well, I think that what happens in the Decepticons is that none of them ever necessarily turn because they're all treacherous, but it means that the leadership of that team is never stable because they're all shitty, like the Nazis.
Or much like Cobra.
True. That is the secret. Like, it's funny because for whatever reason, these boomer kids who came out of Vietnam and went to do this stuff in the 70s and 80s, they didn't trust shit.
No. Well,
Leadership and bureaucracy is bullshit. But at the same time, like, the heroes are like this platonic ideal of people who do right. Duke does right. Optimus Prime does right. It's a fantasy.
Look at the cover. I didn't notice this before, but Optimus Prime is sticking his thumbs into what would be the eyes of Soundwave.
Cracking the glass.
That's a good cover. It's Daniel Warren Johnson.
Yeah. Christ. That's so
He's
good.
good.
That's a great cover.
It's a really good cover.
Look at the motion of it.
I didn't really look at it. No, I don't really look at covers as much as I used to, but looking at it now, actually looking at it, the angle of it, the way the gun is shooting right sort of at the title, the fingers in the eyes, like, it's a very good cover.
It's exceptional design.
We are lucky. We are living in a golden age of Hasbro.
Yeah, so that was one. I wasn't sure. If I'd have anything new to say about it. It was good, but it's good to dig in and sort of elucidate the things.
Well,
that
that's
are really
the thing
good
with us, Josh. Is people will say, "Haven't they run out of things to say about comics?" And the answer is no.
We're trying to figure out what makes things so damn good.
You put a challenge in front of us, and we're going to take it.
Yeah, by take a challenge, we mean talk for a while until we hit on something.
Right, and we've had times where we're just like, God, there's just nothing to talk about this week. What are we going to do in the show? Yeah. And guess what? Those shows have run long.
They do every time. Hey, and you know who's responsible for that? That's right. It's the patrons from patreon.com/iFanboy. They're the reason why this wacky ship stays afloat. They're why we want to come here every week and try to do a good job for folks, because part of a group project we all have going on here.
Whoa. I didn't know we had a group project.
It's a group project. Homework? Well, what happens in a group project is that usually like one person.
Oh, so it's you and I doing all the work.
Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I was actually going to get to the one that you were doing all the work and I was just showing up to the
meetings.
Well,
but their listeners are doing less work. Let's be fair.
Well, they're paying. Not all of them.
Yeah, that's true. Some are freeloading.
Tell you what, listening to our ads, that's delightful. So that's not like any kind of work for them.
That's true.
You can directly support the show, unlock shows for everybody, as has been done. Become part of a great community on Discord or Facebook. You know what? Check into an app named Discard, see if that exists. And it's about like getting rid of people. The monthly patron hangout is part of that. If you want to subscribe at a yearly rate, it's 10% off. There's tier exclusive merch depending on which level you contribute at. At the $5 or higher level, you will get on the list to get yourself a patron power. There's less waiting these days. If you were thinking, I don't know, it might be a really long time. It's not going to be 2 years. So if you've been thinking about jumping on,
we're good. We have a good runway of people still to go.
There was a long backup in the beginning, though.
If you sign up today, you're probably looking to get your power in Q1 2025, which is not years long like it was previously. Yeah.
There's Discord server. That is the $5 higher level. Then at $10 higher level, you'll get an ad-free version of the show. There's an updated thank you page for all the patrons on the website. More is at patreon.com/iFanboy. Over at ifanboy.threadless.com. It's our merch store. There are 13 designs that we have to put on t-shirts and numerous other ephemera and things like that. We are very happy with the things that are there. We hope you enjoy them because we certainly do. ifanboy.com/support has a direct donation via PayPal link. It's what it sounds like. There's no strings. There's nothing to it. It's just a good thing to do if that's the way you want to do it and you appreciate the show. ifanboy.com/Amazon is a general shopping link, an affiliate account through Amazon. So if you buy stuff there through our link, then it helps us out. There's always links on the appropriate, Booksplodes and music and things like that. And where possible, we'll link to bookshop.org, which aggregates local bookstores to help you buy books from them. And so we'll put those where we can. Let's get back into it. I started to write this book on the list, and then I looked and I was like, oh, he just put that there, so I guess I won't add it. Batman, Gotham by Gaslight, the Kryptonian Age, book 3.
Men and X-Men.
Is back.
I definitely really enjoyed this issue, but I also definitely was really lost because for some reason, I didn't really remember what had happened previously. With DC versus Vampires, I eventually remembered, but this one I was like, I just don't remember. Like, do I need to go back and read it? For whatever reason, I was not remembering the story.
First issue I was excited about, Andy Diggle and Leandro Fernandez, Matt Hollingsworth, actually the whole Simon Bullen. That's a great team. Yeah. I'm a Fernandez fan. I always try to buy books that he's doing, and I'll always give Andy Diggle a shot. First book, I was like, that's pretty good. I don't know that I loved it. Second book, I don't know how I felt about it. So when we got to this third one, I was like, I don't know if I actually like this or want to read it, but I did enjoy this issue. And while I don't entirely remember what happened before, I was at least able to follow what was going on with this one. And I think that it worked pretty well.
That's how I ended up coming down on this one, was that I don't remember the details of the issue 2, but this particular story was fun. And they're really widening into the wider DC. So here we have Wonder Woman, who has been living in Skartaris, which is the underground dinosaur land that the Warlord is in regular DC Comics. And that's where all the Amazonians escaped the persecution of the Kryptonian invaders sometime in our past. The people in the book kept saying the sleeper awakens, which is funny because in Warcraft, do you remember the sleeper awakes? That was one of the lines that the undead would say all the time. The sleeper awakes. And so I kept thinking of that.
I do remember that now. It made me think of New Frontier because that was kind of the theme of what was going on.
We had Alan Scott.
The reimaginings of the characters in this, I think, are very original.
Yeah. Alan Scott is sort of your con man, foppish,
he's
balloon
a flim-flam carpetbagger salesman.
Yeah.
And then finally, this is important, Matches Malone. I don't know if he said it was Matches, but he definitely said Mr. Malone.
And she said something about Matches, but yeah.
Yeah.
And then we have the reveal of the Sleeper Awakening, and I did not expect it to be that character. I thought it was going to be a different character.
That was a good reveal.
I liked this issue, even if I might need to go back and reread the first 3. I don't know why the fold in my brain where the information is stored has smoothed out, and I don't even know if that's how it works with brains, but that's how I feel. Did you read Gilt Frame #1?
No, I tend to not read Matt Kindt because I've never really gotten into his work.
This was interesting. This was oversized, and it's a comic co-written with his mom, Margie Kraft Kindt.
Oddly enough, it is called Gilt, but it is not used in that. That should be some kind of pun.
It's called Gilt Frame because of the gilded frames of these chairs. It's a murder mystery. It's about this aunt and her nephew who solve mysteries, much like Marge and Matt Kindt make comics. And it's all about these chairs that she wants to buy that turns out there's a whole murder mystery behind them. And I quite enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was a unique story, unique way to tell it. And at the end, there's all this real information about these chairs and things. And I was like, wow, they really are into these chairs. But I thought it was fun. I thought it was a little confusing at times because it was 64 pages and I was keeping track of everything that was a challenge at sometimes. But I bet if this was an OGN and everything was collected together, I would really love it if I sat down and read it all together. It's like a BBC drama. It's an older woman and her nephew solving crimes. This time they're in Paris because there's chairs that she wants to buy. And it's a cutaway of a giant building, which was fun.
Everyone loves Chair.
Action Comics 1067 was pick of the week. This is Action Comics 1068. Part 2 of the Gail Simone, Eddie Barrows, Superman and the Challenge from the Stars story, and then part 2 of the Lois and Clark in Love at Work Rainbow Rowell story, which I think the title is a misnomer because they don't seem much in love at work.
I believe it's ironic.
The vibe in the second story, I was like, this is uncomfortable. I don't think I've ever seen Lois and Clark like this. They are fighting, and they are not talking.
Yeah, there was a bit where, like, she's like, and you're not talking to me, and I was like, even Superman, huh?
Well, he leaves. They're eating a very awkward silent dinner with their son, and then he goes, I'm going to get some air, and he leaves. And I was like, oh shit, did you just go get cigarettes? And then comes back after she's brushed her teeth and gone to bed and lands back in the bedroom and goes to sleep and not talking. And I was like, oh shit, this might be too much.
This is current. What is happening? Is John in this?
Yeah, he's at the dinner table with them.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I wasn't looking at it. I was just trying to remember. Yeah, I think if you can sort of put I don't know if they would do this away or just accept that maybe they would, because
I don't think they wouldn't. I mean, look.
Right, that's Superman, what I'm getting at.
But they are people, and so they're going to
even the greatest, most loving characters in the world are not perfect. And also, you can't say that Superman is the most good, is the best person. And then his partner, who is every bit as capable as him, also is that way, but the way that she is dedicated to her craft. And because of that, what she's doing makes absolute sense. I buy what she's saying. And it doesn't help him, but, she's drawn this line in the sand between wife and head of newspaper. And it's interesting. It's interesting to play around with.
I was taken aback at first, but I wasn't mad about it. I was like, oh, this is unusual. So the only thing I'll take issue with in this second story is in the last part, he got demoted off the Superman beat because she said it wasn't ethical anymore. That's the source of their attention. And now she's demoting him completely off of the Metro beat entirely. And he's like, okay, but the Metro beat's how I cover being Superman. That's how I get to disasters and crimes, and no one ever wonders why I'm there, and also Superman. And she's like, not my problem. And I went, okay, well, that might be slightly too much. And then later on, when he's demoted to sort of like the human interest story beat, he's covering a bunch of stories, sort of like state fair, dog show. But he's also covering a story where a soldier gets it looks like a Medal of Honor. And I thought that wouldn't be a story he'd find drudgerous. He would actually write a really beautiful story about that.
I thought that was going to be the point. By doing other stuff, he would find some way to appreciate.
Well, he kind of did. Remember later on when he's reading the paper, and you can see his stories in the paper. The guy's like, "Great story! I cried into my cornflakes. Great story! I laughed so hard."
You see them moving up. So the first one was on the back page, and then the last one was like under the
front page,
lead story, at the bottom of the front page. Yeah, which I thought was a nice visual way.
Their entire life is about how she helps him be Superman and Clark Kent. When she says, "It doesn't really matter to me that this makes your life as Superman easier," I was like, "Really?" The person who's constantly calling for his help. I didn't buy that particular beat in it, but that's fine. That was just a minor thing. And I thought the first story was really fun.
Yeah, it was. I really liked how that played out.
When Superman saves the day with the ship, I thought it was really ingenious, the way he keeps it from cracking in half and lands in the river, and then him stumbling out of the river and the people coming to help him get out. I thought that was, that's an easy button push for me. Those are the people of Metropolis running to save Superman was an easy one. This has been really fun.
Like in a classic Superman story sense, like the big ship is falling out of the air, which is, it's classic Superman. It was in Superman Returns, planes falling out of the air, got to fix it.
Yep.
And what he did was say the thing that I have thought 1,000 times. If you push that in the middle, it's going to crumple. How do you do that? And so they came up with comic book science of how to do it.
Right.
He flies around and is sort of in a bunch of different places at once while cooling it as it comes back through the atmosphere with his breath. But the limitation is that he cannot move it further out to sea. So he has to drop it right in the bay outside of Metropolis, which causes flooding, which they then go to pains to say, yeah, a lot of shit got wrecked. And people were hurt, but everyone lived. And I was like, that's the point. And I think that's kind of cool.
I loved it. I really did. I thought this was a terrific issue. This was one I really liked. Up there with the first 3 books we talked about. I hope people are reading this because I know people don't really read out of continuity stuff, or Action Comics always sells less than Superman does, but I'm hoping people are reading this because it's been really, really good.
Yeah. 2 female writers on Superman this month, both killing it.
You usually don't subject me to Star Wars Corner. You usually do it when I'm out on the show, but this week we're heading into the Star Wars Corner, into the depths, into the Dagobah swamps, and talking about Star Wars Darth Vader 49.
This is, I think,
You told me not to bring my lightsaber, but I'm bringing it into the corner. See?
What color is it?
Green.
Okay. I could have guessed that. If you said to me, like, what color do you think it is? I would be like, blue, green, it's green.
I probably want it to be blue, but I said green. What does that mean? That's like a psychological test. I just failed it.
No, it's green because that's what Luke is when he takes control of his destiny and who he is.
It could also be that my shorts are green. I was looking down and you asked.
I like what I said better.
That's probably better.
So Star Wars : Darth Vader number 49 is ending. I can only assume it's going to end at the end of next issue.
49 issues is nothing to sneeze at.
This is the second volume. This started over.
It's crazy.
I'm pointing at the screen. You can't see
People
me.
love Darth Vader. My little niece loves Darth Vader. My little 4-year-old niece. She got Darth Vader on her backpack.
It's a great design.
I was like, looking at my brother like, is that okay?
This has been really consistent. It's mostly just been Charles Soule and Greg Pak. I think Kieran Gillen wrote it for a bit in the beginning. After that whole thing last week about not loving it, I was like, actually, he did a great Darth Vader for a long time. And this has been very Darth Vader as force of nature, but also as a sort of wounded inner sort of being in a very subtle way, not in a way that's annoying. I will say that this is the closest they have come to touching an event that should not have happened before the events.
I heard you talking about that on the show with Ryan. I did go back and listen to that one. You were talking about Luke meeting his mother, right? Or Luke meeting somebody who knew his mother.
Sabe.
Right.
Who was Keira Knightley as the body double.
Which should never happen.
Right. That shouldn't happen. It's not the same thing. In this one, they get a little closer to meeting each other. Luke is unaware of it. And it was very close to the end. Like, it was handled deftly. They're going right up to toe the line that they maybe shouldn't. And it's going to be over soon. And they're not going to meet. But this was, for storytelling purpose and the way to do it, I think it was done really well, because there has to be some sort of closure on this story about Darth Vader trying to hunt down Luke Skywalker for what reasons we don't understand. It never feels like it's there to kill him, but they're always hinting at the Emperor's a shithead, and always two there are. Like in this, somebody said to me, about the 2 Sith thing, right? And he kind of didn't answer, and Luke gets a lot of good little moments. The art in this is weird too, in that Raphael Ienco, a lot of it doesn't look good, but every once in a while it's real good. Sort of bog standard, like people standing there, not great. But some of the other action scenes are good. It's very loose though, and I like that. I like a loose cartoony style when doing these sort of movie ones, so that it's not trying to
that's
the
better.
movie and try to look real. Then again, Salvador LaRocca drew this book forever, and it totally worked. Not bad. I'll be sad to see it go. I look forward to it. It's a nice little Star Wars moment. Yeah, that's presuming.
I'm sure they'll reboot it, another one or something. I guess they can't do it after.
They'll try to do Kylo Ren instead.
Yeah, maybe. So those are the books we're going to talk about, but at patreon.com/iFanboy, every patron who supports the show gets a chance to vote to add a book to the rundown. And this week, by a healthy margin, the winner was X Factor #1, Marvel Comics, written by Mark Russell, art by Bob Quinn, colors by Jesus Berthoff, and letters by Joey C. The latest in the continuing rebooting or restarting of the X-Men line.
Should be noted, for those of you who may or may not remember, this is the team from the excellent Red Sonja book before Mark Russell quit Dynamite. I don't know if Jesus Berthoff had colored it. I'm guessing not. I know that Joe didn't letter it.
I think the colors were a problem. And I think Jesus Berthoff is good colors, but I think he's not the right colorist for Bob Quinn. Mm-hmm. Too much 3D shading on Bob Quinn's art, which is not that kind of artist.
This is a theme that we have come back to over the years.
He's not the artist for that. He's more of a flat color guy. Anyway, this is basically Mark Russell doing Peter Milligan's Ecstatics.
I had a real sense of having read this before.
Yeah. The X Factor is the social media team that the military and some TV producer are running, and they're on Marvel's version of TikTok, and it's all about boosting their profile and their popularity amongst the young people, and yada 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 yada. I really, really like Mark Russell, and I like Bob Quinn, and I thought the books done together have been terrific, but I did not really like this book. There was one bit that was really good, but the rest I didn't like.
There was a thing that I felt I've read this before, and if you remember, there was X-Force with who wrote it? You said, and it was Mike Allred who drew it, right?
It was Allred on art, and it was Peter Milligan on writing.
But then when Civil War happened, was it X Factor? I think it may have been, or the New Mutants, whatever it was. Like they were on a reality show. That was the setup for that. And it's like every
They keep doing
era
this.
has their comment on like, yeah, but what if superheroes were public figures? And the Thunderbolts, the last version of Thunderbolts was like this.
Mhm.
And because of that, it was because it's not just one time I've read it before. I was like, I feel like I've read this a lot. I think, was there something about this in the Teen Titans or no, whatever. I expect more from Mark Russell. And it may have been that they gave him because it definitely was his spin on it. Like this is no doubt a Mark Russell book.
Yeah.
A lot of the beats just felt like they were done before. I didn't really understand. Like I know who Angel is, but I didn't really understand where he was coming from in this at all. And then I didn't really know who the rest of the characters were. And I'm going to spoil this for you now because I don't know another way to sort of talk about it. They do the thing where everyone dies or is taken out at the end. So all the people that we spent all the time with during this first issue aren't going to be in it, which I think, did that also happen in Ecstatics? Am I wrong about that?
Definitely people died in the beginning and they were
like there were a lot of people who were in the beginning and they took them out, which is, it's a comic book thing that happens. It's Thunderbolts. It's, not the same kind of Thunderbolts I was talking about before, but, everything you thought was going to happen isn't going to happen.
Yeah, the only person that survived was that Fire Fist guy who's on the second team as well. He was
Cypher, the one with the electric. He was scared. He has EMP powers. I think he survived. Fire Fist didn't.
Well, I mean, some of them survived, but like Angel's not dead. He's in a hospital. But the only ones on the team are the cyber guy. Mm-hmm. And then I guess Fire. No, that's Pyro. That's not even Fire Fist. That's Pyro.
Yeah, that's Pyro. No, I'm telling you, Cyber.
Yeah. The only person that's holdover is the cyber guy.
I like Wolfsbane. I was like, oh, cool. That's a character I like. That's something I can get behind. I didn't like that. I don't know. Their mission was like, go attack this base in Russia. And I was like, that's a bad idea. Everyone knows that's a bad idea. And it sort of came up really fast. And I get it because they had to go through with this, and then like we've got this Havoc thing. I don't know. It just didn't come together. And I also thought that the parts of it that were like referring to social media and likes and clicks and whatever, and Warren, being like, what? Why are we? And I was just like, all right, we've all done this. Like I've had enough of social media commentary. It's all been said. It really has. I mean, I know like it's all gotten worse.
The difference is it's gotten so much worse than when X-Facts came out. Social media was still a thing that people liked and were happy to be on, and now it's just like so much of it is angry and dark, and
not
Twitter's
just there,
like a cesspool. And
and
they didn't really play with that idea. It's almost treating social media like it's still 2009 or 10.
I'm not even referring to that story. I just mean in general. The point has been made about the dangers in this sort of just insanity that is social media at this point.
They weren't dealing with that. They were just dealing with the older man who thinks likes are weird.
Right, and that's dumb. I'm over it. Like your grandma uses it. She knows what it means.
So Havoc takes over at the end from Angel, and the only parts I really liked about this book were Havoc and Polaris in their relationship, living in their beachfront house in Malibu, and the sort of subtle arguing about what it means to be a mutant, because she refers to him only by his mutant name, and she doesn't want to be called Lorna anymore. And he keeps saying, I'm Alex, I'm not Havoc. I thought that was an interesting conversation.
That was a good fight. That was a well-written argument.
But everything else I was just kind of bored by. It was just, like I said, it felt like an echo of an echo of an echo of a book we've already read.
The color not fitting is very obvious in that sequence in their house.
He's just not the right colors for the artist. Good colors, just not for this guy.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if I saw that there was an X Factor book, I haven't had great. You know what? That's not true. Remember the Peter David?
Oh, yeah, you loved the Peter David book.
Yeah, the Peter David one was great.
Yeah, this different tone.
But I had hopes for it, given sort of the characters. I was like, okay, some of them are new, and then some of them I know, but not really well. And like, okay, let's see what Angel is up to. That's interesting to me. I like the creative team. Yeah, but pretty quick, I really was sort of like, oh, this isn't really what I was hoping for, I guess.
Yeah.
I think I was looking for a smarter and or more original satire.
Right.
From
Why is Mark Russell writing this? And because right now it's just a retread of what Peter Milligan already did. So why is he the one, And so far there's not a reason for that. Anybody could have done this book, honestly. X Factor #1, Marvel Comics, ratings. Out of 5, I'm giving it 2.5.
I'm in between 2.5 and 3, so that's going to make me go
2.75.
2.85.
2.85.
Yeah, I don't think it was like poorly done. I just thought as a theme that didn't have the spine that I wanted it to.
And it's tough because especially so many of these X-Men books have been quite fun. These new
Yeah,
ones.
that's true.
And so this is probably the least fun one I've read so far. So bummer.
What's the status on the next issue? Sticking with it?
I thought about that while you were talking, and I don't know. I'm kind of
Yeah, me too.
kind of curious just to see if the thing continues on, or if this they just sort of the first issue was sort of a tease, and now we have the team, and now we see what that means. I don't know.
I think I'm gonna read the next one.
Mark Russell and Bob Quinn might be owed that from us. You know what I mean?
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think I'm gonna read the next one.
So forget all that talk. We're gonna read the next one.
Hey man, just being fair.
Patreon.com/iFanboy. Wow, we are long today.
Yeah.
Thanks for being patrons. And if you're a patron at the $5 or higher level, you get a superpower live on the show. It's called the Patron Power, and this week's power goes to David Caswell. And when David Caswell is driving and he honks his horn, the horn actually makes a talking sound as if it was like a soundboard for whatever David Caswell's angry about. So it's like, you know, when you're honking your horn because someone didn't put on their blinker and now they're blocking the road or whatever, or they're standing somewhere where there's nowhere to get around them and there's no standing, you know, instead of just the horn sound, it comes out saying like, use your blinker, but only when he's driving. It doesn't matter what car it's any car. Car horn soundboard.
Here's the thing that I want. There's no way in a car to signal, my bad.
Right.
You can kind of do the nod and wave, but it's very easy to, like, I can you're like, sorry.
If David was thinking it, he could tap the horn and it would say, whoops, sorry.
Yeah, that's on me.
David could do that. Yeah.
Do you know how much better the roads would be if people could do that? They wouldn't,
Yeah.
because Americans.
Maybe there's like a light we can turn on that says, my bad.
I've considered it like a little, what I pictures was like a little thing that flaps up. You know, like, sorry, that was me. Like, and then flaps back down.
Like an on-the-air sign at a radio station.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Yeah.
This is my bad.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting. That might make things better. Thanks, David, for being a patron. Patreon.com/iFanboy. I think, whenever I think a question's going to be fast, it ends up not being fast.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we can definitely do one and
Go
see
ahead.
what happens. Bob B. from Dacula, Georgia. Did we say that wrong? Dacula?
He told us how to. I think it's Dacula. Now that you say it like that, because I can see how he wrote it out.
It's definitely not
phonetically the first
Dacula.
time. It's definitely not.
But Dacula's cooler. So Bob B. from Dacula, Georgia.
Dacula is what happens when a dead Star Wars co-pilot comes back as the undead. He
Oh my
becomes
God,
Dacula.
It's gone full Dacula.
I feel as if I could take on the Empire myself.
Big old super Jedi couldn't save my body. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Bob says, I just read Howard Chaykin's comments on Time 2. I don't know what that is, but whatever. Claiming that people would say to him at conventions, quote, I finally get it, end quote, decades after it came out. Is that a book, Time 2?
Mm.
Let me start over. I just read Howard Chaykin's comments on Time 2, claiming that people would say to him at conventions, quote, I finally get it, end quote, decades after it came out. Was there a comic that you just didn't get and decades later realized its greatness? For me, I purchased the first 6 issues of Sandman, and I thought it wasn't for me. Decades later, I watched the Netflix show and read the first 7 trades.
I would like to point out that Time 2 was a story that Chaykin did. I'm not exactly sure when. I guess it was 35 years ago. It was just released on Image. And it literally says, graphically experimental, narratively daring, and visually explosive. Time 2 was a work ahead of its time. So I don't know what he expected. He had done work ahead of its time, and it happened.
You can't blame people for not getting it if it's ahead of
They
time.
weren't there yet. If you show up to the party 10 years early, people are going to be late.
There's no party. Like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, I'm sure there are. I'm just trying to think of any specifically.
This is going to be, it's not really a cop-out answer, but there are great comics that I have read.
You've mentioned this a lot on the show. You've said things like, I wasn't ready for this when I was 20 or when I was
right.
a kid.
There are comics that I read when I was young and I found a way to enjoy them. But then when you go back however many years later, and I can say this about every single time I've ever read Watchmen, is that the more that I learn to appreciate and understand the art form of comics, the better those things get. And you can appreciate them more. And so like, I can tell you, like, I enjoyed Watchmen the first time I read it, but I didn't walk away with like, I get it. Everything is great about it. I was like, that was good. I didn't, you know, and then later, like, Jesus, look what they're doing here with things like story structure, things with parallel visuals, just a way of utilizing panels in a certain way and telling a story. Like, you know, the first, you know, they tell you who Rorschach is on page 1.
Right.
Like it's right there, but also the way that they do it. That's my first example. I'm sure that there are others that you sort of go back and if I picked up Dark Knight Returns right now and read through it, I would be like, oh yeah. I mean, like I see so much more here than I used to. You see the homage to earlier artists and other styles, and you realize how much Frank Miller was getting from, Lone Wolf and Cub and Japanese comics. And I'm sure. Yeah. And we do. That's actually a big part of like our book explodes that we do a lot. Like when we went and we read New Gods, or we went back and I'm trying to think of one that we not League of Extraordinary because I mentioned Alan Moore. Especially like you go and you read stuff from the 60s or the 70s, that you read as a kid and you're like, yeah, it was a fun story, whatever. And then you go back and you see, and this is not exactly what you asked, but because that's like, I get it. Like you read something for something. I don't get it. I don't get what's so great about it. But going back and understanding why people say these are great, it's not necessarily because you're going to be blown away by the story, but then you sort of realize what the craft is, what they were trying to go for, and how revolutionary that was at the time. That makes me appreciate stuff.
It's not exactly the question posited. It's not exactly...
No.
I didn't like this before, and I read it again and did. It's more, I appreciate on an increasingly deeper level the longer I'm reading comics. And so that's more like... I honestly can't think of any book that I didn't like as a younger reader and came back 2 decades later and like, I can't think of any. It's not because I was like so awesome as a kid. It's just, I just either didn't read the challenging stuff when I was a kid or, I liked Watchmen when I first time I read it. Everything you just said about Watchmen, you can say about for me, but so it's harder to say. I'm trying to think of anything.
I have 2 examples.
Can't think of anything.
I don't remember specifically, but I know that I found Dark Knight Strikes Again to be not great when I was young. I wanted to like it very much, and I have since then gone back and read it, and I appreciated it a heck of a lot more. I don't like the coloring, but other than that, there's a lot of good in there that I think that has been dismissed over the year, including by me.
Interesting, because that's a book I hated.
Yeah.
But I just haven't gone back to it. That's the other thing, is like, if I really hated something, there's so much to read. Like, I don't go back to things I hated.
You were pretty against that for a long time.
I hated that book.
No, I get it.
Mostly because of how it looked. The story might have been great, but I couldn't get beyond the fact that it didn't look like the world of The Dark Knight Returns anymore.
But if I'm you, knowing what you know, being able to have the different appreciation, that might be worth it. Plus, it came with the goddamn absolutes. We couldn't do anything about it, which is why I read it again. I was like, well, I fucking paid for it twice. Here's one. This is almost embarrassing. When The New Frontier came out in issue form, my roommate was like, you got to read this. And I kind of started to read it, and I was like, I don't know. I don't get it really. Like that was literally, I don't really. And then like, it was not too much later, but I went and I read the story as a whole, and I was like, this is my favorite comic book superhero story ever. And every time I've read it since then, it's better.
Thanks for writing in, Bob, from Dacula, Georgia. And we're going to have to skip the rest of the emails because they're long, but that was interesting. I'm plagued by not really knowing an answer other than there are definitely things I like more as an adult reader than I did as a
know
kid.
that there are answers to this. Like, I'm positive that there are.
When I was in high school, I read Grendel, and I liked it, but I wonder if I like it more as an adult. But the thing is, that's not disliking and liking. I just can't think of anything I disliked and then read later and liked. Just I can't think of any.
I didn't like Jason Aaron's The Other Side, his first story he published.
You did.
And then I read it later, and I liked it. I don't think I liked Scalped at first.
You didn't like the first issue of Scalped?
I didn't like the first issue, and eventually I went back and I read the trade, and that became my favorite series.
Yeah.
Really, like, historically for me, the things that
You're
really
hard
love.
With the first issues.
Yeah, the things I really, you've really got to win me over. So the things I love, a lot of times I didn't love them at first. Like Radiohead is my favorite band. I couldn't stand him for years. I didn't used to like Will Ferrell.
Right.
That's just me. It's one of my quirks.
All right. Well, thanks, Bob.
So I'm open to it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just trying to think of, like, I mean, it'd be interesting to be like, let's go back and read a book we hated, but I can't think of one. That would be like a big deal book.
I mean, honestly, we just threw the gauntlet down. We got a book explode just sitting there ready for us now.
You want to do The Dark Knight Strikes Back?
I mean, yeah.
I got to think about it.
That's funny.
Thanks for writing, Bob. We want to hear from you. Write in contact@ifanboy.com for this show or for the Media Explode. If it's Media Explode, put it in the title of the email, the subject line. They don't have titles. What's wrong with me? We appreciate everyone who writes in. It adds a fun element to the show, and we apologize. There's always more emails in the script than we get to on the show.
By the way, we finished the email, and I just quit the script. I was like, I don't need this anymore. And then
I'll fly through the end here. So here's some other shows you can listen to. So sometime in the past, Josh's Talk Explode with Jason Robinson. Wow. It's that time of the end of the show where my brain is cooked.
It's been hot in Los Angeles for a long time.
Long
Very
time.
hot.
James Robinson, interviewed by Josh sometime in the past. You can check that out. 2 weeks ago, we had our Deadpool Wolverine show where Paul Montgomery and I talked about that film. Oh, Josh, you saw it. What are your quick thoughts?
I did. I don't know that I have quick thoughts on it. I enjoyed it. I laughed a lot. I have a lot of thoughts on it. And I wish that I had been able to have been on that show. So maybe we'll talk about it on the Hangout.
Oh, a Hangout topic. That's fun. All right. And then last week, we had our Justice League Christ on Infinite Earths Part 3 review that came out. Not Josh, Ron. Nope, not Ron either. Ryan and Paul and I. It is really, I'm sweating down the back of my head right now. Ryan, Paul, and I talked about that film. And then coming up in 2 weeks is our Booksplode Lone Wolf and Cub Omnibus Volume 1 review. We have finished reading it, and we are about to record the review. It's happening. It's all happening. So you can look for that in 2 weeks.
Agami Ito is following the path of the demon. He has no choice. Daguro has to go with him.
In addition to those shows, you can find our library of 1,396 shows. That's the total number of shows that are on the feed over at iFanboy.com, and get them wherever podcasts are sold. Follow us at iFanboy Comics on Instagram. Find out what the pick of the week is before the show comes out. I'm hoping to get that done this weekend. It's been like a month since I've been able to do that. And you can also... Did I say the best panels? Is that what I was talking about? I'm losing it. I'm going to start that over. Follow us at iFanboy.com on Instagram. That's not right either. Follow us on iFanboy Comics on Instagram and find out the pick of the week is before the show comes out. And sometimes the Best Week in Panels feature. I'm hoping to get that out this weekend. Follow us individually at CS Kilpatrick or J. Flanagan on Instagram. And subscribe to our YouTube page, youtube.com/iFanboy, where you'll find all of our old video shows as well as this show we post every week. And consider writing us a review or leaving a star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. It's a great way to help us out. If you can't in any other way, helps people find the show. Thank you for listening. My name is Connor.
I'm Josh, and the best of the week in panels is easy. The best one was when the guy says, "Hey, that's the guy who got rid of the pigeon." And he says, "I strangled them one by one." What a hero. Those are the best panels of the week. That's from Sensational She-Hulk.
It was good. It was a good comic. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.